And I apologize if our screen is not working and our lights are out. We got a couple things we got to fix up in here. But for those of you that might be new, hopefully not many of you, but some of you might be, my name is Mr. Reem. I will be the senior and sophomore counselor this year, but we've transitioned, if you missed it in the newsletter that went out, we have transitioned from, I used to work primarily for the last 5 or 6 years with the juniors and senior class, and our other counselor worked with 9th and 10th graders pretty consistently. We've changed to what we call a class of model, where we will now essentially follow students throughout all, the freshman class will be followed all throughout high school by Ms. Jinger Cohen and myself with the sophomores and this year's seniors, of course. So it will provide a level of consistency that I think will benefit us at school, but also you and students at home. We'll get to know you all a little bit better, make some better relationships that don't transition halfway through school. So we're looking forward to some of those different changes and kind of seeing what that looks like. As with any change, sometimes it does come with unexpected bumps along the way that we have to kind of navigate and figure out. But as we talk tonight, we're going to cover some pretty crucial things that are rather detailed. So just know that we're coming at this from like the 30,000 foot zoomed out Google Lens view, okay, or Google Maps. Like we're zoomed out and kind of taking it from that level. The main reason is because a lot of what we're talking about tonight is related to those post-high school goals. And every single student that's in here and every one of your students will look different. Okay, everyone's going to have a different perspective, a different experience, a different set of goals that they're working towards. And so realistically, being able to speak individually to each of those things is not really feasible at a meeting like this. So we want to get you some basic level information about what the process looks like. We'll look at timeline, we'll look at some items that are falling into this idea of fit. Some of the process, we'll dive a little bit also into that research. What does that research look like? What are some best practices related to it? And then have a little bit of time at the end for some questions. And like Ms. Django Cohen said, we will actually be setting up and sending out some information about some optional, what we call post-secondary planning sessions that we'll be doing classroom work with students both through pathways and different curricular classes, but sometimes it's nice to talk about those individual needs or questions. And so seniors will be doing that pretty quickly here. Probably the next couple of weeks we'll start looking at setting those up because things have, it seems like school gets later and things get more compacted every single year that goes by. It's already, halfway through September, and things don't wait. And colleges have shifted perspectives a little bit. However, let's see, these are my cute kids. Most of the time cute, sometimes they're monsters, but I got 3 little boys, Joel, Silas, and Micah. They're 7, 3, and 1.5 basically, and then my wife Jackie. I always put that up there, one, because I like to share that I too have kids. They're not the same age, it's different, I get it, but I have kids that I struggle with sometimes too. It's not easy being a parent, no matter what age they are. But I also put it up there too because I have 3 snot goblins that are bringing home germs as well. So there's a good chance that at some point this year, if we have an appointment, I might cancel it unexpectedly because I need to be home with a sick kid, or I'm homesick because of my kid, or things like that. So, everyone is pretty flexible, but just want to highlight that. If you missed it, I think most people were here, but I'll just highlight real quick. Just a reminder, we do have Truckee High School is hosting a college fair with about 30 colleges. Some of those schools will actually be here on campus during lunch that day, or at various times that day because they're already in the area. But a college fair is a really great opportunity to go ask some pointed questions, get some resources and information about particular schools. And what I would challenge you to do as students, especially the parents as well, when you visit college fairs is, of course, go to the ones that maybe you're interested in. But I would also encourage you to go to ones that you've never even heard of. And the main reason is because those are sometimes those diamond in the rough schools that I never knew about, but is the perfect potential fit for you. And you would have never even learned about it if you didn't go walk up and talk to that person, get the pamphlet, get some information that sparked a small amount of interest that you could dive into later. We highlighted the counseling website earlier, but for the seniors, this is a really good resource for you as well because we do host a lot of senior-related items on there. For example, like a copy of your senior profiles on there. We have some research tools that you can utilize. I've made some spreadsheet kind of templates that you can use to start tracking information, almost like a digital scavenger hunt. Basically a blank spreadsheet with titles along the top of like kind of important data items that you might want to go around and look and find about each college that you're potentially interested in. It also has, there's a long counseling handbook for both 2-year and 4-year colleges. It's a little slightly dated, but it's pre-COVID, and it's kind of big borrowed and maybe stolen from other places and all mishmashed together, but it's a pretty comprehensive document that if you're wanting to really dive into some of this and do some reading, could be very helpful. And much of that information is actually up underneath the counseling support tab at the top, and there's our 3 domains of academic, social emotional, and college and career counseling. So you can find a lot of different things on there. So this picture, and again, I apologize for a smaller screen, but this picture, kind of like if you're a data or math person, this is a graph with no real data behind it, but I made this graph. And on the left side it says effort and undertaking, at the bottom it says time, which is related to the year in high school. And so, kind of effort and undertaking in 9th grade, most 9th graders start out with a pretty typical set of classes. A few, there's difficulty in some ways, but it's really not that hard in terms of kind of the grand scheme of high school and life beyond. Kind of a soft place to start. 10th grade tends to ramp up a little bit. Maybe some students start taking an AP class or maybe 2 classes. We had a history class in 10th grade. Students maybe start driving towards the end of the school year, things like that. 11th grade kind of looks like this often. 11th graders like to go a little bit crazy sometimes and maybe take on a lot. And maybe because there's a perceived notion that that's important for college, which it is in some ways, but balance is also important in being involved in a lot of different things. So that's start of 12th grade, kind of looks a little like this. Most seniors, well, not all, but many seniors maybe won't take a full load of 6 classes. They're still hard, but maybe not as hard as like taking 6 AP classes and an independent study class and a college class and being a professional ballerina and like all these other things that students have going on. But then this happens. When is this? Hard time? Spring. And this is a very real thing. There's actually a diagnosis for it. It's called senioritis. Okay? And I say this every year. People kind of show, that won't happen to me. And it will. I guarantee you, it will at some level. My warning to students and to parents is really kind of, you have to be aware that this is a developmental phenomenon, we'll call it, that all students will go through at some level. Okay? And it's something that we have to kind of keep an eye out for, because just like with any disease or anything that we're worried about happening to us, it comes at different degrees of like impact, right? And what we want to avoid, a little small, I'm sniffling a little bit, senioritis case is not the end of the world. It's probably like, okay, Johnny, go out and ditch school once, like no problem. But you start getting into these major, like we need to call 911 situations and put you on life support. Like that is not a senioritis that we want to see for seniors, and it's very, very easy to slip into that come January after the first semester. You get your college acceptances in, your AP tests are coming up, but they kind of still seem far away. The sun comes out, the beach looks better than class. So just be aware that this is something that we have to keep on our radar and really keep aware of, both students and family and us at school. There are a couple of resources I do want to share. I will send this out, this presentation out, so you don't need to necessarily zoom in 8 times to try to do that, but there are 2 cool kits that are helpful. If you're in the spot, maybe you're a junior family or a senior family. Believe it or not everyone has submitted applications yet. Don't worry if you haven't even I haven't even thought about this yet. It's okay. You have time. It's not even halfway through September yet. But there are some tools that will help you. These are great because they kind of provide some leading questions. There's some worksheets that you can work through, and they really help you define what matters to you in a very kind of pointed and guided way. So there's a CapEx fit kit and then a school bus fit kit. Take your choice of which flavor fits you better. This word fit has really developed probably in the last 10 or 15 years, from a one-dimensional thing of like, which school can I get into? When that was kind of like, who wants me, basically, to kind of a more two-direct or even three-dimensional thing where we need to start investigating information about not only what schools I might fit into their applicant class for, what schools fit me as a person, what schools fit me as a student, what schools fit me as a future career person, okay? And so this fit really is crucial when we're talking about making this list of colleges, okay? Because, like I said, most students in here are not going to have the same college list. I'd venture to guess that almost nobody will have the same college list, okay? There will be a lot of crossover, okay? And that's a really big thing I'll just mention is that we are social beings, right? Teenagers especially, they like to do what their friends are doing, right? They kind of go in little pods over here and like in little pods over here. And that also applies in college applications, okay? You're applying to Cal Poly? Oh, I'm applying to Cal Poly. Are you applying to Cal Poly? And it's not a bad thing, but I want students to be selfish with this. This is a license to be selfish with your own process, because what I don't want to have a student do is go to a certain school that's not a good fit for them because their friend found it to be a good fit for them. Okay, so it's a very important thing to be selfish a little bit about this process and own it for yourself. This is not a group project. The other way to think about it too, this probably makes more sense to the adults than the students many times, but if you've ever sat in a job interview, most of the time, the main perspective in the job interview is, will I get the job? Does the people doing the interview like me? Do I have the qualifications? And that is absolutely a part of the college admissions process, right? You have to have the qualifications. You have to interview well, okay? But anyone who knows anything about interviewing and doing it well knows that the interviewer should also be interviewing that job and company. Do they have the values that I share? Will this be a good use of my time, energy, and skills? Will this help me reach my future goals for growth? Okay? And too often, that part of the equation, in both interviewing and in its analogy of college applications, gets forgotten. Kind of that brand name comes up, or the financial aid scholarship comes up, and we don't consider, like, will I be happy there? Do I have access to the things that I need or want that help me reach my goals? And sometimes we just need to take a step back and kind of like really look into some of those things. These are a couple things, I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but these are other helpful tools that are available to people. Big features, so we use SCORE, that's our kind of in-house tool, which has a lot of great resources. I am by no means a singular tool person. I think people should use many sources. Big features from the College Board that also has another great set of like research tools available to people. The FISC guide, that is an actual hard, if you're one of those like, I need a book, this is a book. It's about that thick. They're put out pretty much annually, and they go through about 200 to 400 colleges, and they give really, really good like reviews and information about the colleges that you don't typically, like, from like an independent, like Consumer Reports for college. Okay, so that's kind of what that is. And RUG's recommendations is more about majors. Okay, so that's more about like what school is kind of like, they do kind of like a similar thing with majors of like doing kind of like an independent investigation of their outcomes and like what schools have strong majors at that particular campus. So those are 4 cool ones. So we do have a team to help you with this process, right? And when I talk about the team, I think usually it makes most sense when I relate it to sports. Most students at our school, probably 70-80% of students participate in sports at some point. So the idea of sports makes sense. The person that's running the race or playing the game, that is the student. You are the athlete in that equation, okay? Mom and dad, aunt, uncle, grandma who went to Harvard and like reads essays somewhere, like they are not the athlete. They're the coach, the athletic trainer, the scout. Okay, they are people to support the athlete doing the best that they can. Okay, but too often we as the adults especially, we try to get in the game. We try to put on the jersey, we try to go and dribble the basketball and steal it from our kid because maybe they're not dribbling right or like fast enough or things like that. And it does two things. Number one, it's not helpful. Okay? College admissions officers, guess how strong their BSO meter is? It's like super strong. They can tell when you're writing it for them. I can tell when you're writing it for them. That's one thing. Number two, what does that tell your kid? Think about it. What does that tell your kid when you say, I don't trust you enough, future adult person who's about to leave my house in less than a year, I don't trust you enough with this process, so I'm going to do it for you. It's like a right in the back. It really hurts. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, you can do that for me, no problem. I've had multiple conversations. When that happened, the student's like, no, it just tells me that they don't believe in me. And that's super lame. Like, this is the last year that you're gonna have them at home. Let them take charge, and it's a very scary thing. I can imagine, because it's hard for me sometimes when the kids out there with the AYSO, like, kick the ball. Like, no, they need this opportunity, okay? So we are all part of this team, but the student is the one who's playing the game. So just a quick overview of timelines. Okay, we're gonna kind of go a little bit back. So we have kind of 9th grade to now. This is now seniors, not necessarily now juniors. Okay, so if you're junior, like just adjust a little bit. But 9th grade to now is the big time to do research, to do the planning process, to think about what your goals are, to identify those needs and wants, take any potential tests that you might need or want to do, okay? And then we walk into senior year kind of with some of that information ideally done, okay? Say ideally because if it's not done, you do still have time, okay? But it's a big process, okay? You're about to spend who knows how much money, depending on where you go or how much financially. You get a lot of money potentially. You should spend like 30 minutes thinking about your college list. Okay, this is probably one of the biggest investments of both time, energy, and money, apart from maybe buying a house, that most people are going to invest. So when we think about like an investment versus a project or like a tedious thing that I have to do because my mom told me so, it's really changing that perspective of I am taking the time, energy, and money to make this the best possible investment I can, okay? So if you change that timeline and thought process to investment, it changes and flips that script a little bit. So September to December of senior year are typically when most applications are started, reviewed, revised, submitted, okay? So they've had some like Supreme Court stuff that happened in the last couple of years that changed some rules around college admissions, so colleges can kind of do what they want now with their deadlines and opening dates and stuff, where it used to be, you could even start until October 1st. Now it's like, April of junior year, you can submit your stuff. Like, don't rush. It's your one shot, you want to make sure it's perfect and as best you can. But that's when most of the applications are actually done. By about November, December, most students will probably have submitted most of their applications. There might be a few lingering ones. Almost if you are taking any of those tests, you'll probably be done testing at that point. Usually, depending on your decision deadline, you will probably be November, December. Sometimes it could be as early as October if you're doing anything early. Around November, December is also when the junior college process tends to start kicking into gear. Okay, so it's starting a little bit later. It's a little bit of a delayed process as we work through the year of senior year. So don't worry if you're like, it's October and I haven't filled out my community college application. It's usually a little bit later. So October through March is kind of, and sorry, I missed, they have a tweak this year, which is a super fun tweak. Ignore that because I didn't update that and didn't catch it. That is the typical. Junior families, this will still be the same. Senior families, you're in a super fun year of a brand new FAFSA. Yay. Anything brand new from the government is always fun. Because it's perfect the first time. So, testament to that, it's not even going to be ready until December. Normally it's available in October. So, and they still haven't told us much about it yet either. So we're kind of like, all right, waiting, and slowly we're getting trickled stuff out. We sat in a fun 3-hour webinar on Monday about all things FAFSA. But yeah, so still a lot of unknowns related to it, but just know seniors, if you see October 1st, you are filling out the wrong application. It is not available, okay? So late December is what they're telling us right now is when it will open. We will hold a senior-specific financial aid, like deep dive workshop, probably closer to end of October, early November, given the change in the deadlines and the timelines and lack of information. December through May is when most of our scholarship process happens. A lot of times, juniors also have a lot of questions about scholarships, paying for college, things like that. December through May for majority of colleges and in-house, like local scholarship applications is when that normally happens. When we go through the actual financial aid information event, we'll break down a little bit more, but the vast majority of students will get their money either from the federal, state government, the school itself that they're attending, your family, or our local community. Believe it or not, McDonald's does not usually give us a scholarship, Coke is not usually there, Dr. Pepper's not kicking the field goal for $1 million. Like, when people ask me, like, what scholarships should I fill out? I say, well, are you super bored? And they say, no, I'm super busy. I say, okay, well, you're probably better off actually investing your time in your actual activities that are gonna help pay off on the local scholarships than spending 3 or 4 hours a day completing these like random online sweepstakes is what they really are, applications. If you're sitting around twiddling thumbs and they're watching YouTube 24/7, sure, go for it. Just do it wisely, be careful because there are scams and if you have questions about like what are some reputable sites to look through, you can. But just know the results and the return on your time investment are relatively slim. Okay, so it's not always the best use of time. And then finally in May of senior year, that's still kind of considered the national decision deadline. Again, however, those kind of like formal agreements colleges say they are going to follow have changed. But normally they're going to expect you around or about that date to have placed a monetary deposit, do what's called an SIR, or Statement of Intent to Register, and kind of start the process with one individual school. So that's kind of seniors, I need to make a choice by this day, okay? So that's kind of the target. Now, this, I want to just preface that this is very generic. This may not fit you, but this is kind of a general, I would say minimum, but decent target range of school kind of like diversity, okay? And when I say diversity, I mean, if you apply to all REACH schools, they admit 5% of students or less, and that's your entirety of your application list, you might be disappointed at the end of that process, okay? And statistics would probably back me up on that, okay? So you want to have a diversity in a number of different ways. One of them is admissions, so like you want to have a diverse list of admission schools. If you have some REACH schools, awesome. But you also want some schools that maybe accept a broader range of students. Maybe 40, 50, 60 or higher percent of students are going to be getting into some of these schools. The fifth category is more about looking at your own information. What is my GPA? If I have a test score, what's that look like? How are my academics? Do I feel like I kind of fit this college and they fit me? That's really the wheelhouse that we're aiming for. Okay, we want the majority of schools to kind of be right there. Okay, if you have your highly rejective, that's what they call it now, highly rejective schools, then that's great. But again, you just want to make sure you're kind of also covering your own bases. I kind of talked through some of that. Oh, the last thing I will say, each of these though should be a first choice school, meaning if you only get into one of them, you should be jumping for joy, happy to go there, okay? That doesn't mean that you might be slightly disappointed it wasn't maybe on the top of your hierarchical list of like, this is my first choice school. But I also see students like, I'll see that school makes sense, that school makes sense, that school makes sense. What is that school doing on your list? My mom wants me to apply there. Murphy's Law will come out. That will be where your student gets in. better or worse, okay? Don't do that to them, parents, okay? You need to listen. This is not your college experience. You are not living vicariously through your child, okay? As fun as it might be to go to the University of Hawaii to visit them for a while week, like, that is not where you are, okay? It's time to let go. They're a fledgling adult and kind of, gently or forcibly kick them out of the nest and hope they fly. I hope you did a good job, and like, you most likely did, okay? When we look at two-year colleges, the beautiful thing is you're picking one. That doesn't mean you just research one, but the community college process is non-competitive, meaning you're not vying for spots and being judged by your results or lack thereof, or how well you write, or things like that. You're going to do your research and then pick a school that fits you and your needs and go there. Okay? There's 116 of them in California alone. Okay? They do have free tuition with some stipulations, but generally speaking, free tuition. And even without that, the tuition is like, I don't know, $48 a unit or something like that. It's super cheap still, compared especially to other four-year universities. And then if you wanted to get a bachelor's degree or beyond, you take 2 years of coursework, you get guaranteed admissions to a school of your choice, potentially in like the CSU or UC system. You complete the last 2 years there, you get a degree that says UC Berkeley, but it doesn't say just started at junior college. Like, it is a path for any student. And I mean any student. It doesn't mean that you struggled in high school. You could be a valedictorian in high school, and this was the right path. There's many different ways that you can use this system to save money, to potentially fix some oopses that maybe happened and close doors for you throughout high school. Okay, so it's a really good opportunity, and I encourage every single senior, explore one junior college option. Have that in your back pocket, because you can do all the right stuff. This is the saddest part about college. You could do all the right things and still not get in. And that's really feels unfair, and it probably is. But that's the fact of this kind of cruel and unusual system. So any student should have an alternative path to help reach their goal in mind, and spend some time doing some research there as well. We're going to hit mainly 2 or 3 of these, and we'll break down a couple more, but these are different types of applications, okay? We'll start out here with the UC and CSU app. So the UC and CSU application is, I'm going to say Common App several times, and it means different things. Common App is a formal application, kind of organization, big C, big A. Okay, so like a name, the Common App. The UC application, the CSU application, is also a form of a common application, little c, little a. Okay, meaning that when you apply, say to a CSU, you're going to complete any other CSU application in one place. You're going to fill out one application, select which CSUs you'd like to apply to, pay a fee to each CSU, and hit submit. Same thing with the UCs. You're going to fill out one UC prompt, so you're going to write one, the 4 personal insight questions for any UC you apply to, pick the major, pick the school, pay more money to them, because it's more expensive, and fill out that common application. It makes it easy because you're not filling out 8 different applications, right? You're filling out one and just paying some money to send it to multiple places. Big C, Big A common application has over 1,000 colleges on there. These are primarily going to be private schools, out-of-state, and international schools. Okay? But it also is a single kind of one-stop hub of all these applications, where they kind of have essentially a module system. You do one module that will be kind of like your blanket application for any school that you add to the common application. When you add your schools to this application, it adds little like sub-modules. Some schools want like, how many golf balls fit in the bus? Question like that. Other schools want, probably the most common question students that you need to think about, why do you want to come to our school? And believe it or not, when I ask you that question, you struggle. And if you can't answer that most basic question, I question why that school's on your list. Okay? So if you want to know if a school's on that list for the right reason, answer that question first. Because that's a really important telling one, okay? So those are a lot of different things, and those are submitted individually. This is where a lot of like your teacher letter of recommendations go through, my letter of recommendation, things like mid-year report, which we're not going to talk about, but that's a different application. There are a few other types of applications on here. If you fall into those brackets, we can talk about them, but they're usually a small subset of people, but that's usually not the main focus. So this is where it gets super fun and confusing sometimes. But when you apply, you get more choices of when and how do you want to apply and how strict do you want to apply. Okay, so there's two main buckets of types of applications: non-restrictive and restrictive. Okay, and we'll kind of work our way across. The non-restrictive application types basically mean just that. You're submitting an application just like anyone would imagine an application is. You're putting your name in the hat. There's not any limitations on like where I can apply, how many other applications I can submit, stuff like that. Regular decision usually has a later deadline in the springtime typically. Okay, February, January, March, something like that. They basically, it's kind of your stereotypical application. Well, when we think of college date it opens, you have this window of time to submit, date it's due. Okay. Rolling admissions. So regular decision would be CSU UCs. That's an example. Rolling admissions, an example would be like UNR sometimes. Montana State is a great example of this one. But basically what they do is they typically have a much larger window of time this application is open, and they process your application as they're submitted. This one, it's open, kind of like a garbage can. They collect it all, close the can, and they start reading it. This one, it's like dropping it in your mailbox. Oh, I got a letter. Oh, I got a letter. And you start reading them as they come through. Okay? There's a couple benefits to that. Normally these schools that are rolling admissions are relatively lower competition level, meaning they're not necessarily like 10%. They're like 90%, right? And they're really doing more of like a benchmark review. Do you meet our minimum expectations? Awesome, you're in, okay? But the nice thing is, no joke, Montana State, 2 to 3 days. No joke, you get an application result back. If you really want to pat on the back and like a ego boost and a high five going to college, Montana State might be your school. And they're actually a really great school. They have tons of great opportunities in a great location, lots of skiing, lots of great opportunities for things like engineering, some unique programs. They're going to pay me later for that plug, but no, so it's that. Early action is kind of like regular decision, except it has an earlier deadline. Okay, then they might have a regular deadline of February 1st, an early action deadline of December 1st. Okay, really all it does is let you maybe get a result back sooner. Okay, there is zero admissions benefit to applying early action. And to be honest, sometimes applying early action can backfire. And here's why. For 2 main reasons. Number one, probably more on the student. Students rush through to try to meet this pretend early action deadline for real no benefit other than this like, now I don't have to worry about it anymore. And I can maybe get a letter back in the mail sooner. The problem is sometimes they're rushing and not submitting their best. Sometimes like a November 1st early action deadline, they might have needed an extra 30 days or someone else to review it, okay, that time. So I would not necessarily rush to meet an early action deadline unless you are 100% confident you are submitting your best work. The other side of early action is it also requires us to be ready, okay? We are, again, that part of that team. If your coach isn't on the bus yet, it's going to be a rough game, okay? Believe it or not, we have other things to do other than college at school, and so things like recommendation letters, being able to meet to sit down to review applications can sometimes be challenging at certain times of the year. So rushing to meet an early action deadline may not be necessarily in your best interest overall, depending on when you decide to do that. All right, so non-restricted. Restricted ones, and we're really only going to focus on one, but it's pretty important, okay? And I have seen an uptick in people deciding to apply early. Okay, which, again, I'm kind of demonizing it. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is when everyone decides to do it. Because it takes our window of deadlines from 4 to 5 months and puts 100 deadlines in 2 months. Okay, so it's challenging on our end too. But restrictive means when you apply ED, early decision, what that means is you are going to sign this piece of legal form. I will sign a piece of legal form. Your parent will sign a piece of legal form that says, if we let you in, you will do several things. Number one is immediately place a deposit and do that statement of intent to register. Number two, you will withdraw any other active applications you have to any other schools. And number three, you will show up on the first day of school. And if you do not, we have the right to take legal action to come after you for tuition. So it is a very important decision. It's not something to take lightly, and that's why they make us, they literally have us on the Comment App say, did you have this conversation with this family? And we say, yes, we did. And we scared them enough to think about it clearly. But it really is something to really consider. This is I am 5,000% invested in this school. There's no other school for me. I've done my research, this is it. Okay? If you're like, yeah, I kind of think of that one, but maybe that one over there, probably not for you. Okay? This is the one that does come with admissions benefit though. Okay? And it's not like night and day admissions benefit, it's maybe tip the scale admissions benefit. Okay, where you're maybe on the line, this one might say, oh, you know what? This is someone paying the bills for us, like they are good enough to get there, and maybe push you over that edge that maybe wouldn't have happened otherwise. Okay? Because they are a business. People that go to school, keep the lights on, pay their professors, right? They need to make sure that they meet a benchmark. Okay, it's called yield. That's the technical term. When they meet yield, that means they have met not over and not under. Because what happens if you're over? You don't have dorm rooms, you don't have space in classes, right? It's not like selling cars where it's just like, great, we have more. You don't necessarily want more in college. But you also don't want less, because if you can't pay your professors, you can't build a new library, like all these other things. So they have gone very deep data science, it's Big Brother to the nth degree, of trying to figure out who's actually going to show up. Any questions so far that I can maybe help answer? We'll keep going if not, and we'll have a little time at the end. But anything so far before we forget? Write it down. If not, we can come back to it. Couple application tips for seniors and juniors while you're looking at this. It's important to think about as you're starting to develop your list. But I mentioned kind of briefly, but this is your one chance. You generally don't get another chance at an application. Okay? If you apply in your senior year and you don't get in, there's a pretty strong chance that, like, if you're like, I'm just going to wait till next year and try again. Pretty strong chance, it's a pretty good indicator you're probably not going to get in then either. Okay? Not necessarily black or white, like there's always the outliers, but it's pretty predictive. So do review. Think of this as like, I say, your kind of application, you're clicking a button, but there's no takes backsies. Like, it's like sticking a stamp on an envelope and putting it in the mailbox. You can't get it back. So you want to make sure everything's right. It's not like number 7 in your name, or you spelled something wrong. And like, it's important just to like take the time to get it reviewed. I'm happy to review your both essays and application with you. Okay, so it's something that we'll talk about how to kind of facilitate some of that later on. But talk to your English teachers. Talk to your parents. But students, when you're writing things, always write a first draft yourself. Do you know why? Who do we care about hearing from on that essay? The student, right? So when we hand off too soon, who starts coming through? The parent, the counselor, the teacher, the aunt, whoever is looking at this essay. Use that for second and third drafts. Okay? It's a refining process, not a writing process. Deadlines are important. And North Dallas High School, we will own this. We do not do very well with setting you up for success with meeting deadlines. Big gripe of mine, but Mitchell's not here, so I can say that. But I think we sometimes miss the ball on that in terms of your future needs related to deadlines, where it's like, this is the deadline, turn it in your house. I don't have it. Okay, turn it in tomorrow. I still don't have it. Okay, just turn it in with your name or something on it, and we'll give you a grade that you can redo it and give it back to us. That does not happen in college, both in class or the application process. If it says 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, you better be asking, is that server on the East Coast or the West Coast? Okay, that has happened. They're like, but I got it said 11:59, but it was East Coast time, and no one paid attention to that. It's kind of messed up, but that is the fact of the matter. Okay, so you want to make sure you're asking those questions. Being honest is really important. Okay, colleges will check things. If something sounds out of character, if something sounds kind of outlandish a little bit, I get calls and emails. Hey, yeah, they said in their activities that they were like the team captain of like the cancer curing club. Like, was that actually true? It's like, no, the club doesn't even exist in our school. And so you don't want to blatantly lie or embellish things either. Okay, so it's really important to be honest, and that includes things like the FAFSA and scholarship applications too. Okay, and then pay attention. When you hit submit, people are like, sweet, done, cha-ching, I'm in. Now we wait for 3 months and nothing else happens. Usually also not the case. They're going to send you emails, they're going to get you a portal, they're going to follow up with you. And we all know students are super good at checking their email. Right? So it's something that you have to do, and juniors, this is a good practice to get into as well. This matters, because if you don't respond to an email that comes through, it might be a time-sensitive email that has an action that's related to it. Okay, so you do need to make sure you're following up, and then logging into your portals that you'll then get access to later. So we're going to talk briefly about testing for the seniors that might have missed it. We're going to kind of breeze through a little bit, but most testing is still available for seniors if you wanted to take ACT or SAT tests. Those are the college admissions tests that are most generally accepted. Like I said, usually through October through December, depending on how you're applying. You can take these tests multiple times. Most people do if they are wanting to submit one. But most schools now are optional, and that really is the best. That was one change that COVID made that really was a huge benefit. It gives you the choice whether you feel like you are strong enough in that particular area to submit it. Because we all know, what's a test? It's a snapshot of a 3-hour window of your life, right? Might not have been your best snapshot. Maybe you were sick the night before, or had something going on, or like rolled from prom and like went to the test, which does happen. These are things that you just need to know. And your question is, what does this add or potentially detract from my application when you're considering, should I submit a test score? It does not hurt to take a test, other than a couple hours on a Saturday and a little bit of like mental anguish. It doesn't hurt to actually take a test. You can still choose whether or not to submit it. But you have to know that for yourself. If you're like the person that says, I despise tests, I do horrible at tests, like if I never have to take a test again, that would be the best thing ever, don't submit a test and don't take them. Like, why? But if you're like, I kind of feel like I can represent myself well through tests, like it captures a little bit of like my knowledge and understanding, go for it, see how you do. Okay, maybe take it a second time, because you usually don't do the best the first time you do it. Okay, all CSUs and UCs are test blind, so if you're primarily, which most of our students are, primarily considering those schools, they won't look at it even if you score perfectly. Okay, so if like your list is all CSUs and you're like, should I take a test? I'm gonna say no, because they won't look at it. It's not viable for them. And then she mentioned, Ms. Jenga Cohen mentioned Fair Test is a really good resource if you have questions about which schools do require. There are a small handful that do, mostly like military academies, a couple schools in Florida and Texas, and then there are some that are kind of like wording it differently, like it is strongly suggested, like they can't really require it anymore because they would get shunned, but they, you can see like strongly suggested, it's not necessarily something you want to ignore. AP exams, we'll just touch briefly, because I think most of you are here for it, but again, the registration deadline is November 13th. This is a hard deadline. We will send out many reminders to this, but if your student does not register by this date, they will not be taking a May 2024 AP exam. Okay? If you're a junior and you miss it for some reason, You can take it in 2025 if you're a senior, look into the CLEP exam. It really can't, so 3 or better is the target, and this is a test that is hard. AP exams are essentially a semester-long college course that is translated into high school classroom, okay? And so what that means though is if you think about a movie even of college, do kids just go sit in class, sleep and work on their phone and then roll into the final and do well? No, they are studying their butts off. And I think, to be honest, our students really struggle with that. And partly, again, maybe our fault a little bit, because what happens? You come in, get a 2 on the test, oh, okay, let's do some test corrections and fix that and do that over, right? High stakes exams are not like that. And I think we've seen kind of the fluctuations in some of our exam scores overall as a school. And I think it's really important to know, like, if you're taking an AP course and you intend to take the test and want to do well, it's going to take a significant investment of your time, especially in the springtime, okay? It will take regular studying, regular prep work, okay? Because you can't just sit through class and expect to roll into the test and get a 3, okay, or higher. And then the registration is all done online. We'll send a lot of information out regarding that later. Let's get this. When we look at priorities, we really want to think about a couple different things. And this is kind of like this idea of what are the things that matter to me, okay? And I kind of break it down, and I have students tend to draw 3 columns on a piece of paper, or make 3 columns on a spreadsheet. And I ask them, what are my must-haves? These are my non-negotiable items. Okay, some examples we'll look at in a second, but like 3 to 7. Don't go overboard. Okay, 3 to 7 is a good target. What are my nice-to-haves? These are my bonus. If I have all these and I have one of these, awesome, we're in the right direction. And what are my must-not-haves? And parents, this is usually your call. Must not be $100,000 a year. Must not be like co-ed dorms, like things like that. Might be something like parents care about. But it could also be things like must not be more than 500 miles away, or must be able to get home by driving. Like things like that might be in the must-not-have category. Okay? And here's a couple other examples. So some must-haves. I had a meeting with a student today, and we were talking about kind of stuff like this, and I asked them, what does a large school mean to you? A large college? Like, give me a number. And they were like, 4,000. It's like, no. Put a couple more zeros behind that, and then you're in the right territory. So I think that also is really challenging though, because a lot of our students, believe it or not, want something completely different initially than where they are now. Guess where our most popular schools are? The beach, right? Completely opposite of where we're at. And trust me, I don't fault them for it. I moved here from the beach. Like it's great, but I think they also see like, I want to live in a big city. I want to go to a giant school. And to be honest, it's really hard because many people, unless you've actually done that or really experienced it, that's a really big shift. Okay, so you really want to kind of quantify what does 15,000 students actually mean? What does University of Michigan 40,000 students actually mean? That is a small, medium city, right? You want to investigate things like, some nice to haves might be a sports team or a club team on campus. It could be things like looking into, say, a pre-professional program that they have. Okay, because believe it or not, most colleges don't have a pre-med program or a pre-med or a pre-law major. Okay, you're going to study physiology or biology or something like that, and then they go through and they work with you in their 2nd or 3rd year of college to this pre-professional program to then apply to medical school and work on your goals there. Okay, but they have information about that. You might want to do some research if that is a target for you. And then a couple not-haves that we kind of touched on as well. Okay? But we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. You want to make sure that you know, like a lot of times when I say, what do you want to do with your life? The first piece of that equation says, I want to go to Cal Poly or San Diego State. But they can't answer the what next. So I always have to kind of back people up and say, how do you know that that's the right next step for you? How do you know that Cal Poly will help you reach your future goal if you haven't really considered it all that much? And it's hard. Trust me, it is. I changed careers completely. I studied aerospace engineering. That was, you are glad I didn't make airplanes. But it's something that, is difficult for asking an 18, 17-year-old student to do. But it really matters. Because you want to know kind of what target am I aiming for? Because you don't want to do what I did and aim completely over here and ended up way over there. It takes time, takes extra energy. It's kind of disappointing sometimes. Okay, so it's not always possible, but you do want to start spending the time there. And I kind of liken it to car shopping. Okay, breaking it down to a smaller, maybe more approachable, understandable level. Do you ever just walk into a car dealership, give me something with 4 wheels? No, I hope, right? You generally have some needs. You might say, family is really important to me. Being close to home really matters to me. That is a key essence of my priority system. Or maybe a student wants to go fast. Maybe they want a 4+1 program to get their master's. Okay? Maybe they want to go to a junior college and load up credits and save up some money to be able to transfer. Okay? But we need to look at things differently and switch our perspective, because if we're not thinking about what is it I actually want from my college experience, what do I want to leave with, we might end up in a place that's not able to help meet that goal. Okay? So we do need to spend that time researching. The other thing to do, and this is more related to majors. Okay? This statistic might be a little bit old, but there are some very common things that students want to be. Can you guess what they are? One's up here: a physician, a police officer, a teacher, an engineer, a nurse, and a firefighter. Not that different than probably when they were my kids' age. Right? Okay? How many people of you know just an engineer? You just do engineering, not specialize in anything. Right? So like you're a civil engineer or a biomedical engineer. If you're a physician, you generally are not just a physician, right? You're a family practice physician, you're a surgeon, you're a radiologist, right? And that matters, because usually when I ask kids, what do you want to study? I still get those answers. And not, only 8% of the healthcare industry is made up of doctors and physicians. It means over 90% of the entire healthcare industry is made up of other positions that are highly needed and highly paid and highly valued. Nurses, vocational nurses, x-ray technicians, okay? So you want to think deeply about the different buckets of careers that are available. And that's also hard, okay? But you also want to kind of consider your trade-offs, because the same student that walks in my office and says, I want to be a doctor, and the next question is, tell me how much you like school, right? And they're like, I hate it, I can't wait to be done with school. I'm like, you're probably not going down the right career path. We might want to shift and look at a different thing. If you don't like school, there's another avenue, maybe be a medical x-ray technician that takes a year, or a certification course that gets you in the similar field that you're interested in working in, gets you paid well, and reduces the pain of having to take 8+ years of further education plus more residency. I did not update this, I'm not going to talk too long on it, but I wanted to highlight, because college is competitive. Many colleges are, not all, and it fluctuates year to year. I didn't update with 2023 fall data, but it was rather similar, so it's still a good example. These are all the different UCs in our state, okay? They are our most competitive state system. CSU is, generally speaking, a less competitive system admissions-wise. They usually have a different focus on campus. UCs are very research-heavy, heavy knowledge. UCs are, generally speaking, more teaching-focused, book-smart knowledge, right? So when you look at this, though, I think it's really important, and the main reason I show this is 2 reasons. Number one is it's not personal most of the time. As much as it feels, it's a very personal process for your family, for your student. But usually admissions results are completely opposite of that. It's a number thing. They admitted 14,000 students to Berkeley out of 128,000 students. I don't even know how they can review that many things, and they tell us they do it twice. Okay? So they had an 11, they denied 9 out of 10 people. And I like to look at it that way. It's not like they admitted 10%. No, they denied 90% of people. Okay? Their average GPAs, and that fluctuates because we do different GPAs differently by school. The thing that I think I want to highlight though, and this is really kind of a call out to the junior college system, is like, you know what? I really think Berkeley is a school for me. Awesome. Go for it. Apply. But if you're one of those 9 out of 10 people that don't get in, and you still want to go to Berkeley, their transfer admissions rate is over double that. Okay? And you will probably save money in that process. Okay? And most likely, if you struggled at some of these schools maybe getting in, maybe your GPA or your class grades and things like that, maybe weren't as stellar as you had hoped. Okay? You worked hard, maybe they weren't perfect, or you had a couple mistakes or struggles. When you do this, you get a clean slate as well. They're not looking at your high school GPA and transcripts anymore. They're looking at your college process. So you could have a 2.0 GPA in high school, not get into potentially any four-year college if you applied, transfer to junior college, get straight A's, and go to any college you want, and probably get a decent scholarship out of it. Okay, so that's a pretty important thing to realize. I'm not going to cover this. We kind of talked through this in different slides. This highlights a couple different things related to some of the different applications. I will just point out a couple things that we didn't touch on. When we're looking at the UC system, a lot of people ask me, where do I do my recommendation for the UC? You don't. Okay? So there's no teacher interaction with the UC system. It's really application, extracurriculars, your coursework, and personal insight questions for short answer responses. The CSU system, they're open October 1st to November 30th for submission. And like I said, you'll submit one application to all the different things. The CSU system has no essay, no personal statement, no letters of recommendation, and essentially you're being let, this is the most zoomed in picture of the tree that most colleges get. Okay, they don't get that extraneous information that is helpful of your writing, a resume, things like that. Okay, and it's kind of hard to really quantify like how they're admitting students sometimes, especially at some schools where they get a lot of applications and they're rather competitive because they don't have a lot of information to go off of. Here's just a couple examples. This is probably a year or two old now, data-wise, but it's pretty standard year after year. Most competitive in that system is about 2 out of 3 students don't get in, but it's better than any of the UCs. But your Cal Poly, Long Beach, San Diego States are among those schools. And then your least competitive, or most broadly admitting, is Sonoma State, Cal Poly Humboldt, which is now a Cal Poly system up north, Stanislaus Chico, and San Bernardino. Okay, Sacramento State is actually one of our probably highest admissions rate because we are in their local area. Okay, if you meet A through G requirements and have a 2.5 or above, you're all but guaranteed to get into Sacramento State. Okay. Do either of these 2 lists give better educations? The answer is generally no. They're potentially different, and I think they're potentially viewed different in our society. But education-wise, diploma-wise, and degree-wise, the answer is no. There's a book by Frank Brunei, Where You Go Is Not Who You Will Be. And if you're interested in learning more about, it basically reviewed like 200 of the top CEOs, politicians, governors, things like that, and looked at, because there's this perspective, everybody went to an Ivy League school who's anything, right? They looked at all these people who are anything, and it was significantly the minority of people who actually did that. Okay, they went to their state college, they went to junior college. It's less about where you go, and it's what you do while you're there. Okay, so you can go to any school and be successful, or you can go to your most hoity-toity school and be unsuccessful if you are not taking advantage of the different opportunities. Private colleges do have a variety of deadlines, so you have to pay attention there. We are not going to dive into too much financial aid talk tonight because we're running short on time. But you do want to compare college costs. And this is another area. I talked about diversity in application lists. This is another area that you want to diversify in terms of your college list as well. Usually a little bit later on in the process though, but you don't want to apply, when I say diversity, don't apply to just all private schools. Because what are you going to get? All private school financial aid offers, which is oftentimes more. But on the same note, you don't want to necessarily just apply to all CSUs either. The best approach is to diversify that option list and kind of look at getting a couple from several different systems that also give you different admissions looks. It also gives you a different financial aid outlook at the end of the game too. Like I said, we will post a full financial aid package. FAFSA will be delayed, and I would put the year up there because that's confusing to most people. It's the year that you will be in college, okay? So like, if you pull up the FAFSA right now, you'll see the 23-24 FAFSA. That makes sense. We're in the 23-24 year when we should be filling this out. That's not the right one. So it's always, you're filling it out the year prior for the upcoming school year. Okay, so just know that. We're going to talk briefly about letters of rec. Students and pathways, either today or tomorrow, you probably got a short video from me about some information related to this. Just so parents know as well, letters of recommendation are a pretty important piece of most private and common application system processes. Okay, what a letter of recommendation is basically something from us, myself, a teacher, an administrator, a coach, sometimes a community member, that basically speaks and shares both our experience and our thoughts about you, the student. All right. There's a couple things I want to highlight. Number one is they are not required. I don't say that to say that we're not going to write them for you. I say that because we might not. It kind of depends on a number of factors. For example, in my office, like most Common App schools, will say you need a counselor recommendation. I do my best to write one for as many people as I feel I can adequately represent through a letter. If the only experience that I really have with you is you kind of grumpily coming and telling me that my schedule is messed up, fix it, and then walking out the door, you don't want a letter of recommendation from me. Okay? And I'll probably just politely tell you, I can't write one that's going to represent you well. I don't write bad letters of recommendation, so I'm just going to choose to not write one. Okay? If a student is new, that's a little bit different circumstance, right? I haven't got a chance to know you, for example. In that circumstance, many times I will say, no, I don't know much about you. Do you have a counselor maybe at your other school that you moved from that can speak well about you? I would be happy to, my stipulation, read that letter, make sure it's pretty on par with what I can kind of surmise, and then submit that in my place. Okay, so if you're a newer student, that's the best way to do it. Then the last thing is, this is a lengthy process for everybody involved. Okay, when we write letters of recommendation, I write more, they call it a bullet pointed summary type of letter of recommendation because I write so many of them for pretty much all students. And I don't have you in class every day. Your teachers usually write longer form, paragraph, true letters. It takes me probably about 45 minutes on average to write a decent letter. Your teachers can spend up to 2 hours, okay? And they can't shut their door like I can, or like book calendar time on my calendar to do this. They're teaching classes all day. So this happens in their prep, it happens in the evening, in the morning, on the weekends, on their vacation. Okay, so it's a very big commitment, and I think students really need to know that. Like, number one is it's an ask. You need to personally ask, step up and say, hey, Ms. Lefevre, I really appreciated being in your class. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like I demonstrated some of my abilities. Would you be willing to, write me a letter of recommendation? She might say, okay, well, can you tell me your first deadline? I'd be like, well, it's October 1st. Okay, it's September 28th. I don't think I can meet that deadline, I'm sorry. Or, it's December 1st. Like, okay, yeah, that's great. Can I have your senior profile, which is something that students should have? You hand it to them and you say, here's my first deadline, and then you follow up with them later, typically with coffee or cookies. Okay? And then later on in the school year, thank you, like a well thought out thank you note or thank you card is more important than anything else. They'll save those. Okay? Students, make sure you're owning the process. Okay, this is you. You are the one in charge of all of this. As much pressure as that feels, it should hopefully give you a little bit of ownership in it as well, of like making some decisions, starting to be that adult that's going to step out of this high school and walk into it. Parents, if you're struggling, or you notice your students struggling with some of this stuff, don't struggle in silence. Okay, please come and ask. Like, that is why we're here. We're here to help navigate this process. I have many answers. I may not have all the answers. Okay, but I'm also very researched. I have a lot of connections. I know a lot of things about a lot of things. Okay, so please ask for things that you need from us. Just a couple last touches on a couple resources that I mentioned. SCORE is a great place. It also is where we send some transcripts sometimes, so later on in the process, you'll need to provide documentation to colleges. Just know we might direct seniors to use SCORE to do that. We will help guide you through that, but if we do that, just know that that's a tool and it's free and easy to use. I mentioned our college website. This is an example of that college and career tab. There's an application spreadsheet, senior profile. Later on in the game, this is a cost analysis spreadsheet. You plug in all your results, you plug in your cost of attendance, your financial aid award letter, and it spits out what is your net cost in a year, what is your net 4-year cost, all on one page that you can look at all of your schools. And there's a couple opportunities, a couple guides into the resources on there as well. This is an example of that scavenger hunt spreadsheet. It's literally just headings, but it gives you like, what's the location? What type of application am I considering? When is the earliest deadline? What's my major? Is there an essay that I need to do? Kind of a single place to start keeping track of deadlines, dates, what I need to do for this particular process. All this applications also have a lot of help in either embedded or on their website. It does help me, help you, to like do some basic research before you maybe ask a relatively basic question. It just helps everyone kind of save a little bit of time. Like, because if you make an appointment, you come in, you drive through traffic, sit in my office, you ask me a question that I might not know, I might just turn around and Google that question and we'll find the right answer, right? So use the resource, pull up the website, there's a help section, do a simple Google search to start. If you're still stuck, or like maybe get inconclusive results, awesome, let's look it up, we can maybe find the right answer. Yeah, but do a little bit of self-help if you can. Here's an example of the Common App. They have videos, workshops, best practices, a lot of helpful tools, and this has a bunch of resources that are other kind of research tools that are available to us. I use these tools, you can use these tools, but that is pretty much it for tonight. Do you have any questions, burning questions that you'd like to ask in front of the whole group and on YouTube? Yes? So the question for people at home, if the application asks for ranking, what do? Northtown High School does not rank. So many applications will actually give you the option to select that. We do not rank. Or you will enter 0. Okay, so good question. Another kind of maybe logistical question related is, what GPA do I use? Right, that's a very common one too. And where do I find it? So typically when we're looking at college applications, we're going to be, they will see all your GPAs on your transcript. And they will also typically recalculate all those GPAs in their own system too. But when we report stuff like on the Common App, it's going to ask you write in your GPA. Okay? We are typically reporting your weighted academic 9 through 12 GPA. Okay? Sometimes they'll ask for both weighted and unweighted as well. But we use the academic 9 through 12 GPA because I love Ms. Page and Mr. Brilliard, but they don't really care about PE all that much. They want the stuff that you're probably going to be doing at their campus. Any other questions right now? Don't feel like if you feel like drive away and, oh man, I meant to ask that question. You can follow up with an email, we can set up an appointment, we can do some follow-up regarding any questions that pop up later, but are there any other questions that I can help answer for the good of the group right now?
You were talking about early decision earlier, and when you apply early decision, you have to remove all your other applications that you may have.
Not when you apply, when you get your result back. Yeah, so if you are accepted, then yes. If you are denied, then you keep going the process. Yeah. So it's not like you're denied and still screwed. Like, no, you just continue on like You know, you're probably a little sad, you can buy ice cream and then go forward, but you don't have to remove it if you get denied. Any other questions? These are good questions. If not, you are released. Go enjoy your evening. Like I said, keep an eye out for some communication from us. We'll try to send out probably every other month, like newsletters like we sent out a couple weeks ago with updates and information and upcoming things. And then we'll also send out some information about like our financial aid night, some reminders about some upcoming things and invites to set up post-secondary planning meetings. All right? Thank you all. Have a good night. And students, will see you tomorrow.